I pulled into my own driveway and found my son and his in-laws on the porch, glasses up like it was their address now. He pointed at me and barked, "It's ours, get out." I didn't argue. I walked away. Noise doesn't change a deed, paper does. That night I opened the folder I built over 30 years, the deed and parcel number, tax receipts, HOA emails, the certified letters I'd sent, the locksmith invoice, every time-stamped photo. In the morning I met the county clerk. One stamp, one entry. The county record said what I refused to shout. At noon they arrived with suitcases, music, and a phone on selfie mode. The gate fob didn't respond, owner of record only. The smart lock ignored their code credentials, revoked, utilities. Still in my name. When tempers rose, a deputy stood by for a civil standby, checked the record, and called it what it was. Trespass. This isn't a ghost story, it's a paper wall story. In the next minutes, I'll show you step by step how a quiet father turned a family ambush into a legal shutdown. Without raising his voice, how one word stamped in the right office can end a coup on your own porch. They thought a shout could erase a lifetime. I trusted the record. Do you want to see the second their laughter died and the porch went silent? My name is Richard Cole, 62. A retired commercial contractor who still thinks in timelines and signed permits. Since my wife Caroline passed, the only place that felt steady was our oceanfront house on the Barrier Island in Pinellas County, Florida. Late light lay flat on the water when I turned through the HOA gate and eased into my own drugget. 2 vehicles I didn't invite were already there. On the porch, 4 glasses lifted as if to toast a deed that didn't bear their names. My son Ethan had his boot on the rail I sanded last spring. Madison stood close, phone half raised, and her parents Gerald and Patricia wore the posture of people who have decided they belong. The bottle sat on Caroline's old cedar coaster. It looked wrong beneath their fingerprints. I stepped out but didn't climb the 3 porch steps. The brass ring around the doorbell camera glowed. Its fisheye centered Ethan just as he pointed at me like a maitre d' shooing a stray. "It's ours, get out." Not dad. Not hello. A verdict delivered for the benefit of Madison's lens. Gerald tried on a legal word that didn't fit him. "You're trespassing." Patricia added a sweet smile that tasted like vinegar and said, "This is family business. I have stood on job sites where a foreman thought volume could make concrete set faster. It never does. Title works the same way. Noise doesn't change the owner. Paper does." I took inventory without moving 2 rolling suitcases, a folded air mattress, 3 backpacks, a sack of paper towels like a flag of occupation. On the table beside the bottle sat the spare gate fob from my kitchen drawer, the tiny crack by its battery door exactly where I taped it years ago. The doorbell camera clicked as motion saved another clip. Faces clear, voices clear, timestamp precise, my voice never above calm. "I hear you," I said, because I wanted the microphone to catch that too. Then I turned, no speech, no plea. I walked back down the path I laid myself, each paver set square, each joint brushed with sand. Behind me, Ethan called louder for the neighbors. "Keep walking." If he wanted an audience, he could have the camera. What I kept was the record. Mrs. Bloom from 2 doors down paused at her mailbox, eyelids blinking in slow outrage. I nodded like a man whose package was misdelivered and slid behind the wheel. The truck idled. I let the salt air pass through the open window until my pulse matched the slow tick of the engine. The phone buzzed, front door motion detected. I watched 10 seconds of video. His finger jabbing, the words crisp, the lens catching those suitcases on my porch boards. I saved the clip to a folder with a sensible name, date, time, porch. Then I put the truck in reverse and straightened the wheel before backing over, the brick habit born of years respecting weight and edges. At the end of the street, the gate lifted the way it always does for an owner of record. I parked beneath the slash pines by the pocket park where I'd once taught Ethan to bait a hook. There's a look a man gets when he's deciding whether to shout or to document. I felt the second option settle like a level finding true. I drove inland to my place in town, turned on the desk lamp that still warms paper to a honey color, and pulled the red accordion folder labeled Clear Shores. Deed, parcel number, tax receipts, HOA covenants, locksmith invoice from last winter. I set the phone beside them and watched the little circle spin as the doorbell clip synced to cloud and then to my hard drive. Another buzz, front door motion detected, a second angle, a second sentence I hadn't heard because I refused to perform on cue. I saved that too. Offices open at 8:30, clerks start earlier. If you know which door they use, you can be first in line. I slid the deed back into its sleeve and left the folder half closed on the desk. The way you do when you plan to open it again before the coffee cools. Outside, a siren thinned toward the interstate. Inside, the screen's glow pooled on the wood like moonlight. The porch had had its scene. In the morning, the counter at the county recorder would have mine. I left the folder half closed on the desk, and the room breathed the way old paper breathes when a lamp warms it. If the porch was their stage, this was my shop bench. I pulled a legal pad toward me and started with names, dates, and the kind of details a county clerk respects: parcel number, legal description in block and lot, tax receipt numbers with fiscal years, dates of the last recorded instruments. Then I opened the doorbell app and downloaded the 2 clips, exported them with visible timestamps, and printed stills of faces, hands, and those suitcases on my boards. The printer's hum felt like steel setting. I built a binder the way I used to frame a wall square, plumb in order. Tab 1, deed and parcel. Tab 2, taxes. Tab 3, HOA covenants and emails. Tab 4, access systems. I printed the email chain with our HOA manager, Denise Carter, where she'd answered a question I asked last year about fob programming and owner of record-only access to the gate and amenities. I logged into the smart lock dashboard and pulled the audit trail from the last 30 days. Printing the entries that showed my last authorized code, the disabled guest code, and the note I'd made when a renter lost a key the previous winter. I slid in the locksmith invoice behind it. If a story is going to hold, the fasteners have to bite. Next came the letters. I drafted a notice to cease and desist and a notice of no trespass addressed by name to Ethan Cole, Madison Monroe Cole, Gerald Monroe, and Patricia Monroe. I used the cleanest language the statutes give you and left emotion in the drawer. I created USPS-certified mail labels online, printed the green barcodes, affixed them, and stacked the envelopes like shingles on the edge of my desk. Then I checked the clock, grabbed my keys, and drove to the 24-hour annex where the self-service kiosk would time-stamp my packets. The receipt tape curled into my palm with barcodes and tracking numbers I photographed before I pocketed them. Back home, I sat again and opened the county website. Property fraud alert was a simple form: name, parcel number, email. If anyone recorded anything against that property, I'd get pinged before the ink dried. I enrolled, waited for the confirmation email to hit, and tested it with a dummy search to be sure the pipeline worked. Then I went to USPS again, this time online, and set a do not change address flag on my name and my parcel address. If someone tried to forward my mail, the system would snarl and I'd be called. People think theft is noise. It's more often paperwork with the wrong return address. By 2, the house was silent in that deep Florida way, the AC clicking, the night pressing on the panes. I called the sheriff's office non-emergency line and asked for guidance on a civil standby at a private residence owner on site. The dispatcher's voice was steady and careful, the way good ones are. She walked me through what deputies could and could not do, what they would need to see, and where to meet them if things turned ugly. Bring your ID, she said, and any certified copies from the recorder. Video helps, but the record is the record. I wrote my checklist in block letters: ID, deed copy, certified receipts, doorbell clips, OHOA, email, smart lock, audit, utility bills. She gave me a reference number and her shift hours. If they're there and refuse to leave, call us. If they're not residents and there's no lease, we'll keep the peace while you ask them to go. I thanked her and set the pen down. It clicked louder than it should have in the quiet. At 8:20 the next morning, I was at Marcus Lee's office with my binder square on the edge of his desk. He opened it the way a surgeon opens a sterile pack and nodded once, the professional's compliment. We didn't waste each other's time. I walked him through the clips, the audit logs, the HOA language, the green certified receipts. He ran his finger along the embossed seal on my deed and smiled the small smile good lawyers save for days when the facts line up. Around here, he said, the one with the stamp wins. He laid out what we'd file, what we'd keep in reserve, and what we'd hand across if things needed to stop being polite. You want payback? He asked. I shook my head. I'm not getting even. I'm restoring order. When I left, the binder felt lighter in my hands, not because it had fewer pages, but because every page had a job now. I drove straight to the county recorder and took a number. Deputy Clerk Angela Ruiz met my eyes over the counter glass and listened while I explained only what was necessary. She made copies of my ID, verified the legal description against the deed, and stamped my affidavit of ownership and contact update. When I slid across the affidavit of non-tenancy, she read it carefully and nodded. This helps, she said. If someone tries to claim occupancy without evidence, this tells the deputy what to ask for. The stamp thudded twice and left its pale blue circles in the corner of my forms like small moons. By the time I pulled out of the county lot, the sun had shouldered up into a white sky and the phone buzzed with a property fraud alert confirmation. I allowed myself one long breath and then another. The porch had been their noise. This was my paper. As I turned onto the causeway, my phone chimed again, a different tone. It was an email from Denise at the HOA with a subject line in all caps: owner of record, access only. Beneath it, a single line that lifted the hair on my arms. We just logged an attempted gate entry from a deactivated fob at your address. Do you want the timestamp forwarded to the sheriff? Denise's subject line was still blinking when I walked into the HOA office. The little bell over the glass door making the sound small stores make in towns that remember your name. She had already printed the log time date fob ID result. Declined. Owner of record mismatch. She slid it across the counter and tapped the line where Ethan's old fob had tried to sing to the gate. You can forward this to the deputy, she said. Yes, I answered and watched her attach the PDF to an email addressed to the senior dispatcher who had given me last night's reference number. The quiet revenge of a timestamp is that it doesn't need an audience. I spent an hour there turning knobs most people don't know exist. We cleared my guest list to none and turned on the camera that reads plates at the entrance set. Retention to the maximum allowed by the covenant. Denise reprogrammed the amenities so only the owner of record could book the cabana or unlock the gym door. Then we opened the emergency contact screen and deleted everything but my cell and my attorney's office number. She looked at me over the monitor. You want me to add your son back when this settles? I shook my head. We only add people who respect the gate. She clicked save. The cursor hesitated and then the system gave a soft confirmation tone that felt like a friend nodding. From there, I sat in the parking lot and began calling utilities. The power company picked up first. I asked them to add an account PIN and block all changes without it. The representative read a careful script about identity and recorded consent. I spelled the code twice and added a verbal passphrase older than my son, the name of the street where Caroline and I rented our first apartment. Water and sewer were next, then internet. Each time I asked for the extra layer the kind clerks suggest when they hear a wobble in your voice and understand that someone is trying to move you out of your own life using a phone line. On the third call, a supervisor said, "Do you want us to require in-person verification at our office for any name or mailing address changes?" "Yes," I said, and felt something settle inside my ribs. People think theft is a crowbar. More often it is a smooth voice and the wrong date of birth. Back at the counter, Denise drafted a memo to the patrol staff and posted it to the HOA's internal board, owner of record access only. She wrote it like a building code, short, hard, with no room to stand sideways in the words. Beneath the headline, she noted the parcel number and the simple sentence that saves arguments, fob access, and amenity privileges are restricted to the owner of record on file with the county recorder. No exceptions. She printed one copy for the folder at the front desk and handed me another. "A fob doesn't understand shouting," she said. "It only understands the owner of record." I allowed myself a smile that didn't reach my voice. That's the idea. We tested the lock and gate sequence from the maintenance tablet just to be sure there wasn't a ghost permission hiding in the system. Gate no, gym no, cabana no. The swim key that never seems to lose its status for long finally gave up its little blue light. Denise forwarded the decline logs to my email and to Marcus with a note that would read to a judge like common sense. Then she slid a laminated card across the counter with the after-hours HOA patrol number. "If they show at twilight and try again, call this first while you dial the sheriff. We'll meet them at the gate so the deputy isn't walking in blind." By midday, I was at my kitchen table with the binder open and the utility confirmations printing in a neat stack. Each vendor had sent me a follow-up email, pin added, fraud alert, noted address change lock, engaged in-person verification required. I saved the PDFs to a folder labeled Access and printed a one-page checklist for the front of the binder so the deputy wouldn't have to go looking when the time came. Outside, a lawn crew moved along the block, their trimmers making that bee buzz that turns yards into straight lines. The normalcy of it pressed against the wrongness of my porch last night and made the line between order and nonsense bright as chalk. In the afternoon, I drove back to the island and parked 2 streets over. I watched the gate through the live camera feed on my phone. An SUV rolled up, hesitated, and then inched forward until the bumper pressed close enough to read the sensor. The arm didn't lift. The plate camera grabbed the numbers cleanly. A hand appeared out the window, waving at nothing as if courtesy might persuade a servo. The SUV backed up, idled, and then left. My screen pinged as the system emailed me its own proof. The satisfaction wasn't loud. It was the feeling of a bolt sliding all the way home. When I got back to town, the house smelled like paper and coffee. I checked the binder again, added the HOA memo and the latest gate log. On top of the stack, I placed 2 certified mail receipts with green bars and tracking numbers that could be read by anyone who valued a chain of custody. The phone buzzed once more with a new message I didn't expect until tomorrow. It was from Deputy Clerk Angela Ruiz. Subject line, recording posted. Her first sentence was only 5 words, but they pulled me upright in the chair. "Certified copies ready at noon." Angela's email was still fresh on my screen when I stepped into the county clerk recorder's lobby, the line of morning business moving past the glass like a slow-tide probate packets. A marriage license pair holding hands, a contractor with a rolled plan under his arm. The room smelled faintly of toner and cardboard. When my number flashed, I carried my binder to the counter. Angela Ruiz looked up through the safety glass, recognized my name from the thread, and slid the microphone closer. "Mr. Cole, let's get this straightened out." I passed my driver's license and the original deed, She compared names and the legal description, tracing the block and lot with a capped pen as if measuring twice, then nodded. We'll start with your affidavit of ownership and contact update. I signed where the arrowed stickers told me to sign. She fed the pages beneath a stamp that came down with a hollow thud. Received. The ink bled a precise blue circle that looked like a small moon settling on the corner of the page. This puts your current contact information on the record, she said. If anyone files anything against this parcel, notices come to you. I set the next document on the tray. Affidavit of non-tenancy, I said. No one has been granted occupancy rights. She read every line, lips moving just enough to prove she was not the kind of clerk who only scans. This helps deputies, Angela said. If someone tries to claim tenancy without evidence, they'll know what to ask for lease utilities in their name, mail, anything that shows occupancy. If those aren't present, it's not a landlord-tenant issue. It's trespass. She stamped the corner. Received. Another blue moon. From the inside pocket of the binder, I slid a slim stack. Notice of no trespass for Ethan, Madison, Gerald, and Patricia, each one signed and already mailed, certified. These aren't recordable instruments, she said, but I can date stamp a copy for your enforcement file. She pressed the date into the top margin and handed them back through the slot. If you need a deputy to stand by the stamped copy, helps them keep the peace. She printed a one-page receipt with instrument numbers and a status column marked pending, then turned her monitor so I could see the queue. We scanned today. The index posts within 1 to 2 business days. When it's live, you'll see the entries here. She tapped the screen where my parcel number glowed. I'll also email you conformed PDFs once the system stamps them. She glanced at my binder at the neat tabs and the certified mail slips tucked inside. You don't have to shout, she said, voice low and even. The record shouts for you. Let the record speak. Something in my chest loosened the way a tight bolt gives when the threads finally align. I asked for certified copies once the posting went live. She keyed the order and clipped a claim ticket to my receipt. Check after lunch, she said. If the index updates early, I'll push your copies to the counter. I stepped away to the side table, laid the stamped affidavits beside my ID, and took photos for the digital file corners, stamps, instrument numbers. An older man in a straw hat was arguing gently with his granddaughter about where the notary seal should go. The notary, patient as a metronome, pointed to a blank space and waited. The patience of people who work with paper is a kind of mercy. You either learn it or you break against it. When I reached the door, the phone buzzed. 2 messages stacked themselves like bad decisions. The first was from Denise at the HOA plate reader, ping, same SUV as yesterday, slow roll past the gate, log attached. The second was from a number I knew by heart even when I wished I didn't. We'll be there Saturday at 2. Don't be in our way. I looked at the blue circles drying on my documents, at the instrument numbers. That would become entries the deputies could read from their car computers. Outside, the Florida sun hammered the pavement bright. I folded the receipts into the binder and headed for the parking lot, already hearing the hollow sound the stamp would make again, this time on the certified copies I'd hand to a deputy while suitcases slid over my porch boards. Saturday heat pushed down like a hand when I parked a street over and walked the last yards with my binder under my arm. High noon in Pinellas makes every color louder. The bougainvillea too pink, the sky too white, and the front walk to my own porch too bright for what waited there. Ethan's SUV nosed against the curb. Madison already live on her phone. The comments flicking past in a vertical river I refused to read. Gerald tugged a rolling suitcase up each step. Patricia posed the bottle near the door as if a label could bless a theft. They tried the gate first. The fob beeped once, then nothing. The arm stayed down like a policeman's palm. The plate camera blinked and logged what it needed to log. They swung around the block and used a side street to reach the house. At the smart lock, Ethan tapped a code I'd revoked Tuesday. The keypad lit, considered, and returned to dark. He tried again, slower, as if humility could sweet-talk firmware. Nothing. The HOA golf cart pulled up with a soft whir. Denise's patrol staffer, a young man with a clipboard and the unflappable manners of someone trained to de-escalate pool fights, smiled from a prudent distance. Afternoon. Just a reminder, amenities and access are for the owner of record and their listed guests. Madison didn't lower her phone. We are family, she said, making the word sound like a master key. The staffer nodded at the clipboard. I understand. Today there are no guests listed for this address. I stepped out then where everyone could see me and dialed the sheriff's non-emergency line with the reference number from 2 nights ago. My voice didn't have to climb. The sun did that work. Civil standby, owner on site, I said, and gave the address. Denise's patrolman lifted 2 fingers as if to say, I'll wait with you until they arrive. Deputy Hall rolled up 10 minutes later, the blue strip on his cruiser quiet in the light. He listened to everyone, which I respected, then asked for IDs. He took mine first, flipped it once, and handed it back with the kind of small nod that says a man looks like his photo. He checked Ethan's license, Madison's, Gerald's, Patricia's, then returned to his car and tapped his MDT. Owner of record, he asked, eyes still on the screen. I slid the certified copies through the air like a carpenter setting a square on a board. The pale blue seals caught the noon, the instrument numbers crisp. He looked at the papers, then back at the MDT. Matches the index. Ethan had disappeared into the SUV and re-emerged with a folded air mattress and a handful of mailers scooped from some unattended flyer stand. He dropped the mattress on the porch and fanned the junk mail on the table like cards. We've been staying here, he announced to the deputy and then to Madison's audience. Deputy Hall kept his voice level. Do you have a lease, utilities in your name, mail delivered here? With your name, Ethan looked at the mattress and then at me as if foam and air could acquire legal weight by eye contact alone. The deputy glanced at my affidavit of non-tenancy, the stamp neat and blue. Owner has filed a non-tenancy affidavit. Without evidence of occupancy, this is not a landlord-tenant matter. Madison raised her voice for the phone. He's throwing out his own family. Deputy Hall didn't change expression. Ma'am, I'm here to keep the peace and enforce the law. Right now, the record shows Mr. Cole as owner. There is no lease. The HOA logs reflect denied access. The lock shows revoked credentials. He pointed with 2 fingers at the mattress. A mattress doesn't make you a resident. Patricia tried last. We have nowhere else. It landed in the air with the weight of a plea and the shape of a bluff. Deputy Hall looked at Gerald. Sir, I'm going to ask you to gather your things. Then to Ethan he said the sentence I had built all week to hear spoken by someone in a uniform so I wouldn't have to shout it myself. This is trespass. Leave now. The air went still. Even the palms seemed to pause. Ethan swallowed anger crawling his throat. Madison lowered the phone, then raised it again, unwilling to lose the audience she had summoned. Gerald bent the sound of the suitcase wheels on the wood like a small defeat. Patricia stared at the bottle near the door as if wine might reverse a stamp. They backed down the steps, the deputy matching them in quiet, even steps, the HOA patrol cart idling at the curb like punctuation. At the sidewalk, Ethan stopped and set the mattress on end. He looked at me over the vinyl, eyes watering from heat or something less convenient. This isn't over, he said, not loud anymore, more like a man reporting a weather front he hopes to outrun. My phone buzzed in my pocket at the same moment, a new email stacked under Denise's gate log. The subject line carried 3 words and a name I had expected, but not this fast. Locksmith en route, Monroe request. The locksmith beat the heat to my porch by 20 minutes. His van door thumped, tools chimed, and a man in a sun-faded ball cap stepped into the noon like someone walking onto a stage he didn't ask for. Ethan pointed at the smart lock as if force would help. The locksmith glanced at the keypad, then at the jamb where my deadbolt sits, half hidden behind the plate I had installed last winter. He hooked a small reader to the housing, watched its lights blink, and pursed his lips. "It's on a private mesh with an owner-admin account," he said. "Backup battery in the closet independent of the main breakers. Reset requires owner authorization." Ethan's voice scraped. "You're the locksmith. Open it." The man didn't bristle. He hardened. Not without the owner, and not without a court order. He unplugged, coiled his cable, and handed Ethan a printed card. "Call me when you've got either." The receipt he left on the table felt like a verdict in thin paper. They retreated to the curb to make calls, faces angled from the sun, thumbs working. I drove 2 streets over and let the AC calm the truck before I called the power company to ask if anyone had tried to change my account. The representative put me on hold, came back with the careful tone of someone walking a customer away from a trap. "We have 2 attempted changes this afternoon," she said. "Both failed PIN verification. We've added a supervisory flag. Any future changes require in-person with ID." She gave me a case number. I wrote it in block letters on my pad. Water and sewer told the same story, internet too. "We can note your verbal passphrase as mandatory," the supervisor offered. "If it's not spoken, nothing moves. Do it," I said, and felt the last of my pulse settle. An hour later, a notification lit my screen, a video of my porch on Madison's account captioned "To bleed sympathy." He threw out his own family. "Look what money does to a man." The thumbnail showed my face in hard sun crop to make quiet look like coldness. The comments ran hot and wrong. I forwarded the link to Marcus with 3 lines. "This is false. This is targeted. Preserve and take down." He called me before the echo of the send died. "We'll handle it in writing," he said. "We notify her the platform and counsel demand removal, preservation of evidence, and retraction. I'll cite defamation and community guidelines. You screenshot everything and don't engage." I spent 20 minutes making a folder of stills, title, caption, comment, examples, timestamps the moment the deputy said what he said. Marcus's letter went out certified and by email, tight, dry, with the kind of edge that cuts only paper and pride. Near dusk, the property fraud alert pinged my inbox with a subject line that made the room tilt. "Recording attempt flagged, coal parcel." Angela's system had caught a submitted quitclaim deed notarization missing. Required language, grantee name spelled 2 different ways. Status rejected for recording. I forwarded it to Marcus and then dialed Angela directly. She came on the line with the calm of a person who has seen worse. "We refuse to assign an instrument number," she said. "Submission was incomplete and improper." Marcus chimed into the call. "Can you preserve the rejection log and any public metadata?" She answered within her lane. "We keep the rejection record. If law enforcement asks, we have our own trail." When she hung up, Marcus exhaled. "They're fishing with bad bait," he said. "We'll put that rejection into our file in our next letter." By 9 that night, the video tantrum blinked to gray. "This content is unavailable." A platform notice followed, bland and satisfying. I filed it beside Marcus's demand. Utility emails stacked like shingles, no changes processed. PIN required, address change lock engaged, in-person verification only. The binder grew heavier without feeling burdensome. It felt finished, like a wall where every screw bites wood and the studs are exactly 16 on center. I brewed a late cup of coffee and stood by the window watching night replace the brightness that had made every wrong thing look louder. In the quiet, revenge didn't feel like heat. It felt like order finally seating its weight on the frame. My phone buzzed again, a different vibration for a new number. The message was short and officious. Counsel for the Monroes requests a family meeting to resolve outstanding issues tomorrow 9 a.m. Marcus Lee's office. My first instinct was to call it what it would be, a performance. Instead, I texted Marcus, "I'll be there with the binder." He replied with 5 words that sounded like a carpenter tapping a nail head flush. "This won't be a negotiation." Marcus's conference room smelled like lemon polish and paper-quiet authority. He'd set out water and a legal pad, nothing performative, just the tools he needed. My binder sat square on the table. His copy lay open beside a neat stack of exhibits clipped in the order a judge would like to see them. Opposite us, the door clicked and in came Ethan Madison, her parents, and a man with a laptop bag who introduced himself as counsel for the Monroes. Ethan's eyes scanned the room for an ally. Madison's phone hovered, then disappeared when Marcus looked up. He doesn't raise his voice, he raises the record. "Good morning," Marcus said. "Let me be clear about the structure. This isn't a negotiation." He slid the first exhibit forward, a certified copy of my deed, the blue recorder's stamp, bright in the corner. He set the receipt from the county index on top of it, instrument numbers aligned with the date. Ethan started to speak, saw the stamp, and shut his mouth like a door that finally noticed its hinges. The lawyer leaned in. Reed nodded once to show he could read a stamp without losing face. Next, Marcus placed the HOA gate logs, date, time, fob ID, result denied. Behind them, the amenities memo Denise issued, owner of record access only, written like a building code, airless and exact. He added the smart lock audit trail showing revoked credentials and my last authorized change. "Access is not a feeling," Marcus said. "It's a credential. These are not credentials your clients possess." He lifted another sheet with 2 fingers, the way a carpenter lifts a thin shim. "County property fraud alert, attempted quitclaim deed rejected for recording due to improper notarization and inconsistent grantee name. The clerk's office has preserved the rejection record." Counsel inhaled to object, found nowhere to stand in the words, and exhaled into silence. Madison shifted in her seat. Patricia reached for Gerald's sleeve like a woman steadying herself on a moving bus. Marcus turned a final packet face up. "Cease and desist has been sent and received. Today I'm serving notices of no trespass individually named for Mr. Ethan Cole, Mrs. Madison Monroe Cole, Mr. Gerald Monroe, and Mrs. Patricia Monroe." He slid each envelope across the table as if placing placemats where they had insisted on sitting. "You will acknowledge receipt now." Counsel started to ask whether this was necessary. Marcus didn't blink. "Trespass is a police matter. These copies are for the deputy, who may be asked to keep the peace if there are further attempts to enter." He let the exhibits rest between us like a low wall and then did something they did not expect. He opened a thin folder and set down a 1-page list with phone numbers for community housing resources, short-term rentals, and a nonprofit that helps with deposits. "Here is your off-ramp," he said. "You have 48 hours to make orderly arrangements. If you continue any effort to access the property, to change utilities, to post false statements, or to record spurious instruments, we will seek all remedies available, including fees. Take the off-ramp. Revenge would have been easy. This was harder, and it left them without a story to sell." Ethan tried the oldest script. "We're family," he said, aiming the word at me like a pry bar. I met his eyes and let the steel in my voice do what shouting never does. Family survives on boundaries, not the lack of them. He flushed, glanced at the stamp again, and found no sentence that could outvote it. Madison's mouth made the shape of a retort. Then she saw her lawyer's hand flatten an inch above the table and swallowed it. "We signed the acknowledgement of service." Counsel initialed each line like a man counting boards before he pays. Marcus gathered the papers in a clean stack, tapped them square, and rested his palm lightly on top. "You've been heard," he said to the room. "Now you've been informed." Gerald cleared his throat, looked older than he had on my porch, and murmured to Patricia, "We should go." The chairs pushed back in a small scrape that sounded to my ear like a cart rolling off a job site at the end of a long day. In the hallway, the air felt cooler. Marcus walked me to the elevator. "You built a good wall," he said. "It's vertical because you didn't rush the fasteners." I nodded and told him thank you, then tucked the binder under my arm and stepped into the Florida glare. At home, I set the papers on my desk and opened the drawer where Caroline kept the little things. Postcards, receipts from fairs, a clipped brochure I hadn't seen in years. On the front was a photograph of a flag moving in sea wind above a quiet porch. Under it, Coastline Veterans Retreat, a place to breathe. She had circled a number in blue ink. My phone buzzed with an email from the county confirming one last certified copy ready for pickup. I looked at the circled number at the stamp on my desk and felt the next move stand up inside me. The brochure sat on my desk like a small tide chart, the circled number in Caroline's blue ink pulling at me. I took it with me to the island, drove with the windows down until the air tasted like salt and the pines thinned to sand. Night had already laid its hand across the water when I stepped onto the porch. The rail I'd sanded last spring felt smooth under my palm, Caroline's favorite rail. I could hear her voice as clearly as a line popped from a chalk box. Measure twice, cut once. She said it about wood, but she meant everything that mattered. Inside, the lamp by the door made a quiet cone of light. I set her picture frame there, the one from that fall when the light turned her hair into copper. The house did what it always does when I arrive alone. It thinned the noise until only what is true could be heard. The ugliness of the last week floated up like sawdust in sunlight and then settled out of the air. I pulled a legal pad close and wrote, "Dear Caroline," and then stopped. There are letters you write to be answered and letters you write to keep yourself from forgetting what you promised. This one was the second kind. I told her what happened without ornament, the way you would mark studs on a slab. I wrote about the porch, the finger pointed like a cheap baton, the word "ours" flung like a tarp over my name. I wrote about the deputy saying trespass and the small mercy of a man who can keep the peace without enjoying it. I wrote about our house at night, the click of the thermostat, the hush after the surf breaks, and how a man can be thrown out of his own doorway in a single sentence if he forgets his boundaries. Rangyoy Deju Tintun, I wrote in my clumsy private translation of what she used to say, "You keep the line so love has a place to stand." Somewhere after the second page, the letter stopped being about defending a thing and became about using it for the purpose we used to talk about when pain was hypothetical. At a picnic table near the boardwalk, she once pointed at a flyer for a veterans program and said, "A place like ours could let people breathe." I saw that brochure again in my mind, the flag moving in the salt wind above a quiet porch, Coastline Veterans Retreat, a place to breathe. The idea stood up inside me with the steadiness of a level finding true. Keep the house by letting it serve. Lock the future by taking it out of reach of anyone who treats it like leverage. Give it away correctly and make room for me inside that correctness without shame. I flipped to a clean page and outlined the frame the way I'd sketch a wall before I ordered lumber. Gift deed to the retreat. Not a wink or a handshake, recorded, conformed, public. Alongside it, a donor access license, a fixed number of nights a year, no transfer, no private events when retreats are scheduled, all usage in the clear, a permission written in ink, not apology. I underlined 3 words, non-transferable, recorded priority. This wouldn't be a loophole to crawl back through if I grew lonely. It would be a rule, and rules are how you love a house and the people who enter it. I read what I'd written, then folded the letter to Caroline and laid it beneath her photograph. A house should heal, not injure, I said into the room that had taken our arguments and our laughter and returned them to us gentled. Saying it out loud made something ease in my chest that hadn't eased since the day the hospice bed came through our door. I stood there for a long minute and let the decision seat its weight like a beam settling into a socket cut square. I reached for my phone and composed 2 messages without sending either. To Marcus, draft gift deed to Coastline Veterans Retreat plus donor access license per attached outline. Let's make it irreversible and clean. To the number circled in blue ink, Dana Ortiz, I believe our house can do the job yours asks it to do. I can meet tomorrow. The cursor blinked like a heartbeat. I looked at the porch shadows and the line where dark met water. I stopped asking permission to stand in my own house, I said, and turned off the lamp. The screen still breathed its pale light on the desk. Somewhere out on the road, a car passed and the headlights slipped across the ceiling in a soft measure. I pressed save on the drafts and set the phone face down. In the morning, the recorder's stamp would be there to meet my resolve. Whether I sent those messages before sunrise or from the clerk's lobby after the first thud of the stamp would decide how fast the future locked into place. Dana Ortiz met me at a modest office a mile off the causeway, the kind of place with a coffee maker that has seen real mornings and a corkboard full of photographs labeled with first names only. She didn't waste me with speeches. If we do this, she said, folding her hands, we do it clean. The house serves veterans. Your connection is honored. No gray areas. I laid my outline on the table like a carpenter's sketch, gift deed to Coastline Veterans Retreat. Donor access license alongside it with the terms in ink, not sentiment. We worked the numbers until they made sense. 20 nights a year, non-consecutive unless approved, non-transferable. No private events during scheduled retreats, all reservations calendared through their system. A courtesy 30-day notice from me. Immediate suspension if there's any hint of conflict with mission. It's not a life estate, I said. It's a license with rules. Dana nodded. And rules keep the healing honest. Marcus arrived with a thin briefcase and the look he wears when the paperwork already knows how to stand. He listened, adjusted a phrase here, a clause there, and then turned the sketch into instruments. Gift deed absolute to the charity, he said, tapping the margin. Donor access license personal revocable for cause expressly not an interest in land. Recorded by reference in the gift file so no one misunderstands later. Dana slid the drafts back after reading each line slow. We can operate under this, she said. We can protect our clients and protect your memory. We drove straight to the county recorder. The lobby buzzed with the patient murmur of people doing adult things. Angela recognized us over the glass and pulled the mic closer. Marcus presented the deed first, then the license, then the charity's nonprofit certificate. I passed my ID, then stepped back and let the process do what I had built it to do. The stamp came down with that hollow thud that means a thing has ceased to be a promise and become an entry, received, status pending. Angela printed a conformance receipt with instrument numbers and clipped it to a claim ticket for certified copies. Index will post by end of day or tomorrow, she said. You'll get conform PDFs by email. I didn't realize I had been holding my breath until the page warmed in my hand. We walked out into the squared-off light of afternoon. My name was still on my driver's license, on my truck title, on the ring inside the wedding band I keep in the desk drawer. In the recorder's queue, though, the house was already walking to its new work. Marcus checked his phone as we reached the curb. Dana, he said, let me add one kindness. He turned back to her. Client requests a small plaque in the entry understated, in memory of Caroline Cole, may this house be a quiet kind of healing. Dana smiled in a way that wasn't for me alone. We'll set it by the first retreat. At 3:27, Angela's email chimed, index posted, conformed copies attached. The deed now bore the digital stamp recorded like a seal set into wet mortar. I opened the PDF on my phone and watched my name step aside without vanishing. The license file sat behind it, formal as a good boundary. I didn't lose a house. I gave it a new life, I said, and the sentence felt like a beam seating into a joist square load-bearing done. Marcus and I shook hands outside the clerk's doors. Dana left to brief her board and schedule the first group. I drove the causeway with the windows down, the water on both sides looking like a road a man could take if he didn't mind getting wet. By the time I pulled into my driveway in town, the story had begun to move faster than I could. A push notification lit my screen: Coastline Veterans Retreat, grateful for a generous Oceanfront gift enabling couples weekends and peer support. Beneath it, a second alert stacked itself and made my thumb go cold and hot at once. It was from Ethan. You gave it away. Answer me now. The story broke before dawn could wash the stars away. On the local paper's front page was a photo of the oceanfront house facing open water, captioned simply, Veterans Nonprofit receives unexpected gift. Seaside home to host couples retreats. Dana's quote about a place to breathe ran above the fold, and the last line everyone reads between sips of coffee. Landed clean, the deed is recorded with the county. Neighbors texted like a summer storm, congratulations. A few apologies for believing gossip. By noon, the HOA newsletter went out with a blue banner. Congratulations to Coastline Veterans Retreat, and a reminder of the owner of record policy thanking the spirit of compliance that keeps our community orderly. That afternoon, the county's public index blinked, a new line: deed recorded, donor access license on file. I looked at those numbers the way a builder looks at a cured footing, dry square, no voids to hide trouble. Then my phone buzzed. The in-laws had filed a small claims action for moving in preparation costs, a locksmith deposit, linens, a truck on standby. Marcus told me to bring the binder. He would bring the law. The courtroom was small and cool, pew-hard chairs creaking whenever someone shifted. A silver-haired judge read the filings like a master carpenter reads a steel tape. Their attorney offered shopping receipts, a locksmith appointment, and a scatter of junk mail Ethan called proof of residence. Marcus laid out certified copies with the recorded stamp, the HOA gate logs, the smart lock audit, Deputy Hall's civil standby report, and my affidavit of non-tenancy. Any lease, the judge asked. Utilities in your name, any lawful transfer of interest. No one on the other side could answer yes. The judge tapped his pen once, a tiny gavel. You cannot recover money for something you do not own, he said, clear enough to leave no room for another word. Claim dismissed. Filing fee stays put. There would be no, we were preparing to move in story to sell online. The next morning, USPS closed the fraud case. All change of address attempts for my property were denied. Protection flags and in-person verification stopped them. A dry line that sounded like music, no change processed. I printed it, slid it into the access tab of the binder, and felt like I'd driven the last screw into the windbrace. Toward evening, the HOA posted one more note: thanks to the owner who chose the path with a paper trail. The shoreline is quieter when the gate only listens to the right name. I stood on the porch and watched the water change color. Ethan texted a short complaint, not a shout, just a grievance. People are talking about me. I typed slowly and sent the sentence I'd learned to live by these weeks: I choose people who respect the house. The phone went still, as if it understood the argument had left this place by proper procedure. That night, Coastline posted a photo of a wooden chair looking out to sea and announced a quiet launch for the first veterans group this weekend. Beneath it was a private line to me: "If you wish, stop by when we set the plaque in memory of Caroline Cole." I closed the laptop and listened to the low, steady surf against the sandcap like a sleeping heart. Saturday, a few cars would arrive, a few hands would find each other on the porch rail, and a small plaque would seat itself on the wall. I don't know who might stand behind the row of sea pines and watch, but the sound of footsteps on the thin sandpath will tell me before I turn whether the next chapter enters this house with respect or tries one last time to make noise louder than the record. Memorial Day arrived with the sky scrubbed clean and a breeze that lifted the flag from the porch rail. Dana kept the gathering small by design: 10 couples, 2 volunteers with coffee. A local bugler in a blazer that didn't quite hide his military posture. The ocean spoke its low syllables behind us, and for once no one tried to talk louder than the water. The plaque was wrapped in a square of canvas. Dana nodded to me and I pulled it free. "In memory of Caroline Cole, may this house be a quiet kind of healing." The words looked right against the wood, not grand, not shy. A few heads bowed. The bugle let taps drift through the salt air, not sorrowful so much as steady. Ray Torres stood by the step with his hands clasped as if holding a thought. When Dana gestured, he told the truth the way men do when they've carried it long. Night terrors that shrank a room to a balk, a wife who learned to sit on the floor beside the bed and let him find his breath. "You can't fix the war," he said, glancing at the horizon, "but you can choose where you stand when it echoes." The couples didn't clap, they looked at each other in the way that says we're not alone. Dana ran through the schedule like a flight plan. Arrival on Friday's, dinner on the deck, pier pairs on Saturday morning, walks along the water, and a quiet hour for letters nobody has to send. She pointed to the calendar printed on a single sheet taped inside the entry: retreat weekends marked open house hour on the first Sunday afternoon of each month for neighbors and donors. "This place is for breathing," she said. "The rules protect the breath." I saw Ethan before he saw me. He was at the edge of the lot near the sea pines, hands in his pockets. Face set in that neutral mask people learn when they're not sure they'll be welcome. He wasn't filming. He was listening. Ray noticed him too and crossed the yard like the man who had once come up my dock and spoken of still water. "You family?" Ray asked, not unkind. Ethan nodded. "There's an open hour next month," Ray said. "Come then. Walk the rooms. See what the house does when it's busy doing good." Ethan looked relieved to be given a door that didn't depend on me. I didn't make him cross the distance. I met him halfway between the porch and the sandpath where the grass whispers even when there's no wind. We stood shoulder to shoulder, one step apart, men who have known each other a long time and have forgotten for a while how to talk. He watched the couples filter into the main room for coffee. "Do you hate me?" he asked, voice low enough that it stayed between us and the sea. "No," I said. "I just stopped letting you make me small." He nodded as if that sentence had been waiting for him somewhere and finally arrived. He swallowed, tried again. "I thought if I pushed you'd go back to saying yes." I looked at the plaque, at the quiet it made around itself. "I'm still saying yes," I said. "Just not to that." He looked toward the doorway where Dana was helping a man with a cane find a seat. "I can't fix what I did," he said. "No," I answered. "But you can choose what you do next." The breeze lifted the corner of the canvas I'd folded and set by the rail. He glanced down at his empty hands. "What happens now?" I kept my eyes on the line where the water met the light. "When you can walk into a room without looking for an angle, call me." He managed a crooked half smile that looked a little like the boy who used to drop a baseball at my feet and wait for me to field it barehanded. "Okay," he said and stepped back so a couple could pass between us. Inside, Dana tapped her glass lightly and asked me to say a few words. I spoke for under a minute because grief doesn't need an essay, and gratitude works best when it's brief. Caroline taught me that the right lines keep love standing, I said. This house stands on that. The couples drifted to the porch and the flag shook itself once and then settled. When the coffee cups were empty and the bugler had tucked his horn away, the group began to disperse along the sandy drive. I walked Ray to his truck and thanked him. He squinted toward the pines. "Give him room," he said. "Some roads only take one set of footprints." I nodded. As I turned back toward the porch, my phone buzzed. A new message from a number I recognized but hadn't seen in months sat on the screen with a subject line that tied two timelines together. Probate Caroline's letter of intent. Angela from the clerk's office had forwarded it with a note found in supplemental file. "You may want to read before making any further play." The ocean kept its cadence. I felt the old life and the new lean toward each other, and for the first time in a long time I wanted to see what came next. The afternoon settled the way good days do, quietly without asking for applause. The first veterans group arrived in twos and threes, shoulders loosening as they crossed the threshold and saw the plaque. Donna moved like a steady hand on a level, a word here, a nod there, a glance that said the rules were there to hold them, not hem them in. From the porch, I watched a husband set his coffee beside Caroline's name and touch the wood with two fingers, not as a relic, but as a promise to show up again tomorrow. The ocean kept its courthouse rhythm against the sandbar, ruling out the noise. My phone buzzed in my pocket. "Ethan, I'll try again." I didn't type back. Not because I wanted him to wait, but because some answers work better when they walk in under their own power. I set the phone face down on the porch rail and took the small key from my pocket, the new life key Dana had given me, a brass tag stamped with CVR donor access. It wasn't a deed, it wasn't leverage. It was permission with edges, the right kind, the kind you're not ashamed to hand to a deputy or a stranger, because it tells the truth without begging to be believed. An email pinged. HOA case study, owner of record wins. Denise had written it like a public service notice and a neighborly caution at once. Anonymous timeline. The steps laid out, clean parcel number, affidavits, certified mail, gate logs, civil standby. A reminder that the gate listens to the record and the record listens to the stamp. I saved it to the binder and then let the binder stay shut. Paper had done its work. Today was for wood and salt and people who had earned a place to breathe. Inside, a volunteer adjusted the flag on its stand, and the room gathered itself for the first peer circle. I stood just inside the doorway long enough to hear Ray say, "You don't have to fix it all, just stand somewhere that helps." The couples nodded the way people nod when the sentence lands on the nailhead without bruising the board. I thought of Caroline's penciled notes on the backs of grocery lists, the ones that always ended with a small square checked next to measure twice, cut once. She was never sentimental about lumber or people. She respected both by refusing shortcuts. Justice in the end had not looked like a raised voice on a hot porch. It had looked like a clerk's stamp, a deputy's even tone, a utility pin that told a smooth liar no, a charity's bylaws that outlived any tantrum. One well-placed no can save a whole house. I said it out loud quietly and felt the sentence seat its weight where anger used to sit. The satisfaction wasn't loud or sweet. It was solid, the kind a 55-year-old heart trusts more than applause. Ethan's text sat where I'd left it, patient as a tool you'll use when you're ready. I pictured him at his kitchen table, the noise gone out of the day, words finding their proper size. When you've spent years mistaking love for permission, boundaries can feel like exile before they feel like home. I am old enough to know the difference and young enough to wait for someone I love to learn it. Dana stepped onto the porch and handed me a summer envelope. Inside was a photo from the dedication, my hand on the canvas as the plaque came clear. The flag lifted in a cooperative gust. On the back she'd written, "For when the house is busy and you need to remember why." I slipped it into my wallet behind the card with the property fraud alert number and smiled at the strange stack I carry now. Law on one side, mercy on the other. Another email arrived from the county's public affairs office linking to a short note about best practices for deed fraud prevention and owner verification. The community was learning the same lesson I had learned the hard way: order isn't the enemy of love. It is the scaffold that lets it stand. I looked at the brass tag in my palm and thought I choose order so family has a chance to return. The sun tipped toward that hour when the water goes from blue to hammered copper. A couple passed me on the steps, laughing at nothing dramatic, just the ordinary relief of being seen without being judged. I slipped the key back into my pocket and picked up my phone. I did not type a lecture. I typed a sentence that left the door on its hinges. "When you can walk into a room without looking for an angle, call me." Then I let the message rest in drafts for one more tide cycle because patience is part of the structure now. Behind me, the house hummed the small sounds of being used, well mugs on wood, low voices, boots by the door. Ahead of me, the path to the beach showed 2 sets of fresh footprints, and the sea waiting to erase them and make room for the next. I don't need to own the horizon to trust it. I only need to keep the line straight where I'm standing. Here's where I leave you: a house finally doing honest work, a son learning to knock, and one small word, no, set in the only place it belongs. If this story spoke to you, stay with us. Subscribe for more true-to-life dramas about family, property, and the quiet kind of justice. Share your take in the comments and tell me where you stand on lines, loyalty, and the law. Your voice helps shape the next story we tell. And if someone you know needs a reminder that order is not the enemy of love, send this their way. Now I want to hear from you. When family crosses the line, is it wiser to give the house a new life or keep fighting to hold it? And what would you have done differently?